Your comment about working with audiologists, that's one of the things that I really appreciate about working with you, Dr. Backus, is that we have a very mutual, respectable relationship, and it is really refreshing for audiologists to be able to talk with otologists, neuro-otologists, to be able to just talk about our patients and know that we both have specialties, and it's great. So thank you very much for your invitation to be here today. And, oh, it's up. Thank you, Hannah. So good morning. My name is Alison Vega. I'm a board-certified audiologist, and I own private practice locations in Olympia, Lacey, Yelm, and Chehalis. And fun fact, when I was a resident, I worked with Dave Olson at ENT Associates in Olympia, so it's fun to see him again as well. And I'm wondering if anybody's ever had 10 minutes to talk about something they're extremely passionate about. Me too. Okay, cool. So today I'm going to talk about, am I a cochlear implant candidate? And what I want to talk about today is when you see that patient in your office wondering, are they somebody who would make a good candidate? Should I refer them on? So the agenda today, quickly, I'm going to talk about indications for cochlear implant candidacy, single-sided deafness benefits, the importance of a hearing aid trial, and then characteristics of a successful recipient. So indications for cochlear implant candidacy, we're looking at two different things. One, insurance. Will the insurance company pay for it? Do they meet insurance criteria? And will it actually help them? Will it work? So the insurance stuff, that's the big one because it's a very expensive elective surgery. And so we'll talk about that first. But the MSTB3 testing procedures, that's what audiologists use to determine whether or not it's going to work for the patient or whether or not they need it. And that's what the insurance company is looking at as well. We have the audiogram, which Brittany just explained really well. But then we also, during a cochlear implant candidacy evaluation, we're going to be looking at aided test scores, their word discrimination with hearing aids on, and whether or not hearing aids are doing enough help. There's times where hearing aids, maybe they just need new hearing aids, but we need to determine, are hearing aids still a good treatment option or not? And if not, then a cochlear implant is recommended. So we will need a severe to profound hearing loss in both ears for traditional candidacy. What we use now, the MSTB3 testing procedures, that gives us our lists and it gives us guidelines for how we will qualify somebody, but also they recommend now a 60-60 rule. And I think this is really a simple thing for you to use clinically, is if their word discrimination on the audiogram, unaided, is 60% or worse, and their PTA in the ear you want to implant for sure is worse than 60 dBHL, they're likely going to be a good person to refer for an evaluation. So use that 60-60 rule. You're looking for word discrimination worse than 60% and a PTA worse than 60 dBHL. And then I think that's a pretty legit person to refer on to an audiologist for testing. Now, we can have SSD, a single-sided deafness candidate as well, which you're not going to have severe to profound hearing loss. You're going to have one really good ear and one really bad ear. I mean, we're really looking at normal hearing in one ear and a dead ear. That's going to be a good SSD candidate. If it's just an asymmetry, it needs to be at least 40 dB asymmetry, but even then that can be a little bit dicey. So when you're looking at SSD, really look at a good, like almost perfect one ear and then a dead opposite ear. Medicare does not cover SSD. So if they are Medicare and they have single-sided deafness, they're probably not, unless they can afford $90,000, $100,000 for surgery, I wouldn't refer them on. But you could refer them to an audiologist to talk about other options, but a cochlear implant's not going to be one of them. If you have questions about that, the Cochlear Implant Alliance page has a lot of information and resources for you about candidacy and guidelines to help you with your referrals. So cochlear implant candidacy and single-sided deafness. Of course, we can't do a cochlear implant for SSD all the time. If the acoustic nerve is severed, if there's ossification, if the other ear is not really, really good, and if your binaural bone scores are too good, then it's not going to be a good referral. And as well as I talked about, it depends on their insurance. Private insurance will approve a single-sided deafness, but not Medicare. But when all those things happen, when all those things line up, it is really an awesome treatment option for tinnitus control. Patients who get a single-sided deafness and they've got debilitating tinnitus, a cochlear implant can really be a wonderful tool to give them relief. What I also like about a cochlear implant is that it's independent of the opposite ear. So when you are referring on a single-sided deafness patient to an audiologist, we're looking at treatment options. We could do hearing aids like a cross system, we could do a bone conduction system, or we could do cochlear implant. And those are three options that we will discuss with the patient. But what's nice about a cochlear implant is that it's ear specific. It's going to restore hearing in that ear, and we're not dependent on the other side. So if you refer somebody to us who has like an asymmetry, we're looking at that opposite ear. That's the best case scenario if we're doing a bone conduction solution. And if that other ear then loses hearing later, this isn't a good long-term solution, and that has happened to a lot of patients. So you want to just be careful about doing a bone conduction device with somebody who's got a really big asymmetry, and if they're true SSD, I would push for a cochlear implant every time, and Dr. Backus knows that. I'm always texting him, but can't we do a cochlear implant? Are you sure? And sometimes I don't always get my way, but it restores the ear-specific hearing, and it's really a great tool for sound localization. So these patients with SSD, they are having a hard time. Somebody calls their name, and they're like, they don't know where that sound is coming from because they've got this imbalance. When we do a cochlear implant, it's like magic. It just gives them back that ear-specific information. It helps them feel much more balanced and aware of where sound is coming from. The hearing and noise component with a cochlear implant far outweighs any other of those other options. Even bone conduction, it's good, but the sound localization and the hearing and noise component of a cochlear implant is much better than with a bone conduction device. And our friend, the bicross. Hearing aids can be a good option, and what I like about using a bicross for an SSD patient is that it's returnable. We can do a trial in the office, they can try it for a few weeks, a couple of months, but you can't do that with a cochlear implant. So it's a nice option for somebody who's really not sure what to do, or if we're not sure what treatment is going to be best. But the thing is, people don't like cross systems, especially if they have a normal contralateral ear. They don't want to wear a hearing aid in their good ear. And they don't hear well in, cross systems don't do well in noise. A lot of times patients tell me they can only wear them spontaneously or just randomly. They can't wear them all the time, or they can't be consistent. So a cross is really my last option when you're sending an SSD patient to me, because it's just not a great tool for patients. It's better than nothing, but it's kind of my third option. So the importance of a hearing aid trial. We are trying to answer, when you send a patient in for an evaluation, we are trying to answer the question, are hearing aids doing enough? Are hearing aids good enough for this patient? And that's what the insurance company wants us to prove as well. So if you send a patient to us and they've never tried hearing aids, that's tough. We need patients to have an expectation of what sound is going to be like again, what it's going to be like to treat their hearing loss. And if they've never tried anything at all, that it really doesn't set them up well for success because they don't have the right expectations in line. So trying hearing aids first is really important. It sets their expectations, but also sometimes people come into us and they've been fit with hearing aids at Costco or Cochlear. They haven't had a great hearing aid experience, maybe even just very timely. Maybe they were fit virtually. There's a lot of these virtual online hearing aid dealers now, and patients just didn't have good care. So they come to us. During the candidacy eval, we will actually fit them with demonstration devices in our office. We will fit them appropriately. We'll verify them and test them. They might do really well. They were doing awful with their hearing aids, but they do really well with our devices in the office, and we find actually they just needed better hearing aids. So hearing aids do give us a really good indication about whether or not the cochlear implant is necessary or the most appropriate option. And as a side note, anybody who comes to me who needs hearing aids but has never tried them is a red flag for me, because that tells me that they've got some unrealistic expectations. Question in the back? 5 minutes. Oh, crap. Okay. All right. So patient outcomes. This is the most important part of the candidacy evaluation, in my opinion. As surgeons, I know you guys do the magic. You put it in and it works beautifully, and that is amazing. But you also see the patient once, maybe twice, hopefully no more than that, because that means they have problems. Audiologists, we see these patients for the rest of their life. And we have to look at them when they say, I'm not happy, this isn't working, why did I do this, I regret it, all the things. So we have to be really, really sure this person's a good candidate, because there's no going back. No return policy. So great candidates are those who will do the rehab. This is one of my favorite patients. And she is not the first person who has worn a custom t-shirt on the day of activation. This happens a lot. They show up in my office, this is activation day. She is stoked and she is ready. She wants to hear better. This is the type of patient that we look for. We want patients who have a positive mindset, who know it's gonna work. They believe it's gonna work because you know what? It'll work. If they believe it's gonna work, it will work. People who have sharp cognitive skills, if they have some sort of cognitive decline, if they've got some difficulty with cognition, that will be a challenge. It's not a deal breaker, but it's not gonna set us up for success. They need to be agreeable to rehabilitation. They need to be technology focused. They don't need to be able to write code, but they do need to be able to use technology. This is a technology device. And for somebody who's really not wanting to use technology, that is gonna be an obstacle for sure. I look for somebody with a good support system. They've got family and friends around them who are encouraging them every day, because getting a cochlear implant is hard. It is really, really hard work for the patient. I tell patients that they're gonna have to put in work every single day for a year, and that's the truth. If they want it to work, a cochlear implant will only work if they do the work. And then device committing, I'm going to use the device, I'm gonna wear it, I'm gonna make it work. That's what I'm looking for in a patient. If I don't get these things, even if their audiogram tells me that they're gonna benefit from a cochlear implant, if they don't meet these criteria, I typically tell them, I don't think it's gonna work for you, which is a hard conversation to have, but I do it. So I set the expectations and the timeline. Consistency is key, and I do tell them, I set the bar really, really high. It is gonna take you a year to get used to this. That's not really the truth for everybody, but it is for a lot of people. So I just tell everybody it's gonna take a year. That way they aren't disappointed when they're 9 months in and they're still not loving it. But they need to have sound stimulation for at least 10 hours a day. This means quiet is a no-go. These are people who have been living with hearing loss for a long time and they love quiet. They love to sit around in quiet. Well, I'm gonna bring them back to the hearing world, which means they need to be committed to introducing sound into their life for at least 10 hours a day. We set communication goals. And I do that with some different questionnaires like the SSQ-12 or the CI quality of life, the QOL. And we set expectations. What do you want to happen after you get a cochlear implant? How do you want your life to change? And I set some real goals because everybody wants something a little bit different. Mostly it's, I just want to hear better, those types of things. But I set real goals in specific environments so that they know what the hearing aid or what the cochlear implant can do. I talk about their daily life activities because again, if they need to be getting sound stimulation for 10 hours a day, I want to know, what does your day look like? Oh, I'm somebody, I like to knit all day. Cool. We're going to connect it to your phone and then you're going to stream music while you knit. So I'm going to do like habit stacking so that doesn't feel like rehab, but it is rehab, so that they're getting that sound stimulation without even really having to try. And we're going to do things like streaming TV, music, podcasts, phone calls. That's where that technology commitment comes in as well. They've got to be willing to do those things because those are the tools that will get them the outcomes that they're looking for. There are some low-tech options like audio and visual training. They need to do that every day, and they can do things like reading out loud to themselves with a book. Because when the eyes tell the brain what that word sounds like, the neuroplasticity sets in, and they do start to understand speech much, much faster when they're doing those things every single day. Their support system, their family, their friends, encouraging them, you gotta wear it today. Remember, Dr. Vega said 10 hours a day, you gotta do it. They need that encouragement. People who live alone, who like the quiet, it's never gonna work, never gonna work. All right, I gotta wrap up, but there are some also virtual training from manufacturers that we refer patients to, and those are really helpful and important. Only 5% of people are getting recommended for cochlear implants. So when you do make a referral to an audiologist, make sure it's an audiologist who knows about cochlear implants and not just any audiologist. That way they're getting the right information. So thank you very much, appreciate it.